The manila envelope weighed nothing in my hands, but inside were pages that would collapse my entire world. "Are you sure you want to see these?" Detective Reese asked, her eyes softening with a sympathy I instantly resented. I looked up from the unmarked envelope, my fingers trembling slightly against the paper. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, Chicago's skyline glittered in the late afternoon light. Executive Vice President of Marketing, Morgan Bailey. That's who I was. The woman whose name was etched on the glass door, whose voice commanded boardrooms, whose strategic brilliance had helped triple our company's market share in 4 years. "Mrs. Bailey?" The detective's voice pulled me back. "Yes," I said, the word barely audible. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Yes, I'm sure." When I hired the private investigator 3 weeks ago, I told myself I was being paranoid. That Ethan's late nights, the sudden business trips, the way he angled his phone away from me when texting, they all had innocent explanations. But as I slid photographs from the envelope, reality crashed through my denial. My husband of 8 years, pressed against a woman in the elevator of the Langham Hotel. His hands tangled in her copper hair, his wedding ring clearly visible as he cupped her face. The timestamp was from yesterday, when he'd called to say he was working late on the Donovan acquisition. I flipped to the next photo, and my breath caught painfully in my throat. The same woman, emerging from a doctor's office. The sign visible. In the background, Chicago Women's Health and Fertility Clinic. The last photo hit me like a physical blow. Ethan and this woman sitting in a cafe, and between them on the table, an ultrasound image. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear splashed onto the photograph, blurring the evidence of my husband's ultimate betrayal. "There's more," Detective Reese said quietly. "Information you should know before you decide what to do next." But I already knew what I was going to do. I just didn't realize then that it would be just the beginning of the most transformative chapter of my life. 6 months earlier, I'd had everything I thought I wanted. Ethan and I lived in our dream home, a renovated brownstone in Lincoln Park with a rooftop deck overlooking the city. We'd met in law school, though I'd later pivoted to marketing while he climbed the ranks at Callaway & Schmidt, one of Chicago's most prestigious corporate law firms. We were the couple others envied, successful, attractive, seemingly perfect. When we walked into rooms together, people noticed. We complimented each other, my dark hair against his blonde, my pragmatism against his charm, my strategic mind against his persuasive eloquence. The only shadow on our picture-perfect life was our struggle with fertility. 3 years of trying, 2 miscarriages, and 1 failed round of IVF had left me emotionally drained and Ethan increasingly distant. Each negative pregnancy test felt like a personal failure, though Ethan insisted it wasn't. "We have time," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "And if it doesn't happen, we have each other. That's more than enough." I'd nodded and pressed myself against his chest, not voicing the fear that sometimes kept me awake at night, that I wasn't enough. That someday he might want more than I could give him. On a crisp autumn Sunday, 6 months before the detective handed me those photographs, Ethan and I hosted a dinner party. James and Violet Chen, our closest friends from law school, brought their newborn daughter. Ethan's colleague, Daniel, brought his new girlfriend, Adrienne Rivers, a curator at the Art Institute whom he'd met at a firm event. I noticed immediately how striking Adrienne was. Tall and willowy with that distinctive copper hair, green eyes, and a laugh that drew attention. What I didn't notice that night was the way Ethan's eyes followed her when she moved around the room, or how their hands brushed when he passed her a glass of wine. "Your home is absolutely stunning," Adrienne said, admiring the original artwork on our walls, pieces I'd carefully selected over years. "You have impeccable taste, Morgan." "Thank you," I smiled, warming to her genuine enthusiasm. "Art is my escape from spreadsheets and marketing strategies." "Daniel mentioned you're some kind of corporate genius," she said. "Executive VP at what, 35? 36, I corrected with a laugh. and definitely not a genius, just stubborn and caffeinated. Across the room, Ethan was holding the Chen's baby, looking perfectly at ease with the tiny bundle in his arms. I felt the familiar pang, part longing, part inadequacy, and quickly turned back to Adrienne. "So how did you and Daniel meet?" I asked, steering the conversation away from my achievements, away from the baby, away from the growing hollow space inside me. I didn't know then that I was making small talk with the woman who would destroy my marriage, the woman whose fertility would succeed where mine had failed. In the months that followed, Daniel and Adrienne became regular fixtures in our social circle. Double dates, weekend getaways to Michigan wine country, gallery openings where Adrienne would passionately explain contemporary art pieces while Ethan listened with uncharacteristic interest. Looking back, I see all the signs I missed, the lingering glances, the inside jokes. How Ethan, who typically checked out during art discussions, hung on Adrienne's every word. How he suddenly developed an interest in visiting the Art Institute to clear his head during lunch breaks. Meanwhile, our own relationship had settled into a comfortable but increasingly passionless routine. Sex had become less about connection and more about procreation, scheduled around ovulation cycles and fertility app notifications. Conversations centered around work, household logistics, and occasionally, half-heartedly, future family plans. "Maybe we should consider other options," I suggested one night as we got ready for bed, watching Ethan through the bathroom mirror as he brushed his teeth. "Adoption, maybe, or surrogacy?" He paused, toothbrush in hand. "Can we not talk about this tonight? The Donovan case is killing me and I just need to sleep." "Sure," I said, swallowing my disappointment. "No problem." That was the first night I noticed him checking his phone after he thought I was asleep, the blue light illuminating his face in the darkness as he smiled at whoever was on the screen. The cracks in our marriage widened gradually, then all at once. Ethan started working later. Business dinners multiplied. Weekend retreats with the partners became more frequent. All perfectly plausible for a lawyer on partnership track, except for the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume that sometimes clung to his shirts, the mysterious hotel key card I found in his suit pocket, the way he began to shield his phone whenever I came near. I tried to talk myself out of my suspicions, convinced myself I was being paranoid, insecure. Until the evening I came home early from a business trip to surprise him and found an empty house, his overnight bag missing from the closet. I called his office. His assistant sounded confused. "Mr. Bailey doesn't have any business trips scheduled this week." That night, I contacted Detective Reese. 3 days after receiving the photographs, I sat across from Ethan at our dining table, my laptop open between us. He'd just come home from another late night at the office, his tie loosened, hair slightly mussed. "How was your day?" he asked casually, pouring himself a glass of the expensive bourbon he saved for celebrations. I watched him sip it, noticed the slight tremor in his hand. He knew something was wrong. He just didn't know what. "Interesting," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I learned some things today that I think we should discuss." He lowered his glass. "What's going on, Morgan?" Without a word, I turned my laptop toward him. On the screen was a document I'd prepared with meticulous care. A timeline of his affair with Adrienne Rivers, complete with dates, locations, and selected photographs from Detective Reese's file. I watched the color drain from his face as he scrolled through my presentation. The confident lawyer, always ready with an argument or explanation, rendered speechless by irrefutable evidence. "Morgan," he finally managed, voice cracking. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said. "You're an excellent lawyer. But I'm not a jury, Ethan. I'm your wife, the woman you've been betraying for months while you created a child with someone else." He flinched at my calm delivery, probably expecting hysterics. But shock and grief had crystallized into something colder, sharper. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he said, running a hand through his hair. It started as I don't know. She was there. She understood the pressure I was under. Understood? Or didn't put pressure on you the way your barren wife did? The words tasted bitter. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You want to talk about what's fair? Tell me about the baby, Ethan. Tell me about taking your mistress to fertility appointments while I was still tracking my ovulation and praying for a miracle. His eyes widened. How long? I cut him off. He looked down at his hands. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Since that dinner party when I'd welcomed Adrienne into my home, served her food, shown her my art collection. And the baby? 14 weeks, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Does Daniel know his girlfriend is pregnant with his friend's child? Ethan winced. They broke up 3 months ago. He doesn't know about us. Us. The word sliced through me like a blade. And what exactly is your plan here? I asked, amazed at how controlled I sounded while my entire world was imploding. Secret second family? Weekend visits to your love child? Or were you planning to leave once you'd secured your partnership next month? Ethan drained his glass and set it down with a heavy clunk. I don't know what I was planning. It all happened so fast, and then she was pregnant, and I... He looked up, his blue eyes pleading. I never meant to hurt you, Morgan. Spectacular job there, I said flatly. I love you, he insisted, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled back as if burned. Don't. We can work through this, he continued desperately. People make mistakes, have affairs, they recover. We could recover. And the baby? Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, he said, Adrienne has been thinking. She knows how much we wanted a child. She suggested that maybe we could raise the baby together. As ours, the audacity of it stole my breath. I stared at him, wondering if I'd ever really known this man at all. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Your mistress is generously offering to let me raise the child she conceived with my husband while I was trying and failing to have our baby? The baby she created while lying to me, pretending to be my friend? I stood up, no longer able to remain seated across from him. That's your solution? Morgan, please, I want you out of this house tonight, I said, my decision crystallizing in that moment. You can sleep at Adrienne's since apparently you've been doing that anyway. This is my home too, he protested. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and held it up. If you're not gone in an hour, I'm calling James Chen and telling him everything. I wonder how the partners will feel about your partnership prospects when they learn you've been sleeping with a colleague's ex behind everyone's back. Ethan's face hardened. You wouldn't. Try me, I said. You have no idea what I'm capable of now that I have nothing left to lose. 3 weeks later, I sat in the sleek downtown offices of Kiernan and Associates. Across from Diana Kiernan herself, the city's most feared divorce attorney, known for her ruthless efficiency and spectacular settlements. Good news, Diana said, sliding a document across her glass desk. We have a response from Ethan's team. He's willing to give you the house, a lump sum of $2 million, and monthly support payments in exchange for a quick, quiet settlement. I glanced at the document without touching it. And? Diana raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. And it's a generous offer, Morgan. More than most of my clients see, especially in cases where there are no children involved. No children by me, you mean, I corrected. But there is a child involved. Adrienne is 5 months pregnant now, Diana sighed. Which is unfortunate but legally irrelevant to your divorce proceedings. The child was conceived during your marriage, yes, but you have no biological connection to it. What if I told you they want me to raise it? I asked. That they floated the idea of us co-parenting this child as though nothing happened? Diana's professional demeanor cracked for a moment in genuine surprise. That's unusual. It's insulting, I said. And it tells me they're desperate. I want to know why. What are you suggesting? I leaned forward. I'm not taking the settlement. I want to depose Adrienne Rivers. I want full financial discovery. I want to know every detail of their relationship, and why they're so eager to wrap this up quickly. Diana studied me with new interest. Morgan, you're a businesswoman. You know the value of cutting losses and moving forward efficiently. Taking this to court will be messy, expensive, and emotionally draining. I'm aware, I said calmly. But this isn't just about money or property. This is about truth and justice. Justice, Diana repeated, a slight smile playing at her lips. The courts aren't particularly good at delivering that, you know. Then I'll have to help them along. 2 weeks later, I had my answer. Diana's investigative team discovered what Ethan and Adrienne had been desperate to hide. The real reason for their urgency wasn't just the baby or professional embarrassment. It was the Art Institute's missing Modigliani sketch, valued at $1.2 million, and the corresponding funds wired to an offshore account linked to both Adrienne and Ethan. They've been planning this for months, Diana explained as we reviewed the evidence. Adrienne had access to the Institute's storage facility. Ethan has connections to buyers through clients at the firm. They needed your divorce settled quickly and quietly before anyone started looking too closely at their finances. I felt cold all over. My husband is not just a cheater. He's a thief and an idiot, Diana added. Art theft is federal territory. This is prison time, not to mention the end of his legal career. That evening, as autumn rain lashed against the windows of the brownstone that was still legally half his, Ethan arrived for what he thought was a settlement meeting. Instead, he found me alone, sitting calmly in the living room. "Where's Diana?" he asked, setting down his briefcase. "Not coming," I said. "This is between us." He loosened his tie nervously. "Morgan, I thought we were finalizing things today. My lawyer said—" "I know about the Modigliani," I interrupted. The color drained from his face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," I sighed. "Don't insult me any further. I know about the sketch, the wire transfers, all of it. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That I'd just take your settlement and disappear quietly while you and Adrienne ran off with your baby and stolen millions?" He sank into the chair across from me, suddenly looking much older than his 38 years. "What do you want?" "Originally, to hurt you as much as you hurt me," I admitted. "But I've realized something these past few weeks. You're not worth the energy. So what then? You'll turn us in? Destroy both our lives, including an unborn child's?" I studied him. This stranger I'd shared a bed with for 8 years. No. Unlike you, I don't hurt innocent parties to get what I want. Relief visibly washed over him, quickly followed by suspicion. "Then what?" I handed him a folder. "My terms, non-negotiable." He opened it, scanning the document inside. His face cycled through confusion, shock, and finally anger. "This is extortion. This is mercy," I corrected. "You return the sketch anonymously, claiming it was misplaced, not stolen. You give me everything in the divorce, the house, investments, retirement accounts. You resign from the firm citing personal reasons before they can investigate you. You and Adrienne leave Chicago permanently." "You're asking for everything," he said hoarsely. "Not everything," I countered. "You keep your freedom, your law license, and your child. Consider it a generous settlement for someone facing federal charges and disbarment. And if I refuse?" I smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Then at 9 a.m. tomorrow, the FBI, the Art Institute Board, and the partners at Callaway and Schmidt will all receive very detailed files." "Your call." He stared at me. The man who'd once looked at me with love now filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. "When did you become this person?" "When you forced me to," I replied simply. "You have until midnight to decide. I suggest you use the time to talk to Adrienne. After all, her future depends on it too." At 11:58 p.m., my phone pinged with a text message. "We agree to your terms." I didn't respond. But I did pour myself a glass of the same bourbon Ethan had been drinking the night I confronted him with his infidelity. It burned going down, but in a way that felt cleansing, purifying. I'd won. But victory tasted more complex than I'd imagined. 1 year later, the gallery was crowded, the buzz of conversation and clinking glasses filling the high-ceiling space. My debut exhibition, Metamorphosis After the Fall, had drawn an impressive opening night crowd. I moved through the room, accepting congratulations, discussing my sudden career change from marketing executive to artist with practiced humility. The irony wasn't lost on me that Adrienne, the art curator, had inadvertently pushed me toward discovering my own artistic talent during the darkest period of my life. "The centerpiece is extraordinary," a woman in her 60s told me, gesturing to the largest canvas in the collection. "So raw yet controlled. May I ask what inspired it?" The painting in question, Evidence, was an abstract rendering of those photographs from Detective Reese's manila envelope, transformed into fragmented shapes and violent colors that somehow still conveyed betrayal without depicting it literally. "Life," I answered simply. "Sometimes devastation forces creation." She nodded appreciatively, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but respecting the boundaries of my answer. As she moved on, I felt a presence beside me. I turned to find James Chen, Ethan's former colleague and my now frequent companion. "Congratulations," he said, handing me a glass of champagne. "I told you they'd love it." I accepted the glass with a smile. "You're biased." "Completely," he admitted. "But also right. The reviews are already coming in online. The Tribune critic called you a startling new voice in Chicago's art scene." I took a sip, allowing myself to savor the moment. After Ethan and Adrienne had left for Seattle, where he'd taken a corporate counsel position far beneath his qualifications, and she'd found work at a small private gallery, I'd thrown myself into rebuilding. Not just my life, but myself. The settlement had left me financially secure enough to step away from corporate work. On a whim, I'd taken an art therapy class, recommended by my therapist to process my grief and rage. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, I had talent, raw and untrained, but unmistakable. What had begun as therapy had evolved into passion, then purpose. I'd converted the third bedroom, once designated as a nursery in our fertility-focused days, into a studio. Spent months learning techniques, experimenting with styles, pouring my transformation onto canvases. "Have you heard from them?" James asked carefully. "No," I said. "And I don't expect to." It was true. The terms of our agreement included no contact. Occasionally, I saw updates through mutual acquaintances' social media. A glimpse of their modest Seattle home, Adrienne with a swollen belly, then later with an infant. A boy, I'd heard, named after Ethan's grandfather. Sometimes in quiet moments I still felt the phantom pain of what might have been. The child I couldn't have. The life I'd planned so carefully, now unrecognizable. "Morgan," James said, pulling me back from my thoughts. "Someone wants to meet you. A gallery owner from New York. She's interested in bringing your collection east." I smiled at him. This kind man who'd chosen friendship with me over loyalty to Ethan when the truth had come out. Who'd stood by me through the divorce, the reinvention, the healing. Whose presence in my life had evolved organically from support to something that might, someday soon, become more. "Lead the way," I said. As we crossed the gallery, I caught my reflection in a glass display case. I looked different than I had a year ago. My dark hair was shorter now, styled with an artistic edge. My posture was straighter, my eyes clearer. I was no longer Morgan Bailey, the betrayed wife, the woman who couldn't give her husband a child. I was simply Morgan, artist, survivor, woman in progress. The painful metamorphosis that had begun with a manila envelope full of devastating photographs had transformed me in ways I never could have imagined. My divorce had been just the beginning of a journey that had ultimately led me not back to who I was, but forward to who I was meant to become. As James introduced me to the New York gallery owner, I extended my hand with confidence. "Morgan Bailey," I said. "Pleasure to meet you," my name reclaimed. My life, my own. The future, unwritten. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for my rebirth. And for that, ironically, I had my cheating husband and his pregnant mistress to thank. Sometimes the end of one story is merely the opening scene of a much better one.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.